want to remember isn't the man who died a week ago. That man is only the barest layer of who my dad really was. To find the man that we love, you have to restore each layer that we've lost over the last 7 years. You have to go back in time. Before the fall, before Parkinson's, before depression and the end of a career. And there you will find him. His coworkers knew him as a dedicated worker, but I wonder how many of them knew that he was so good at his job because he was a relationships person. He took the time, even years, to get to know the managers of all the bakeries for each super value in his region. And this earned him great respect. He knew the business and the product, but what made him special was his ability to work with people. But the people at work didn't truly know him. To people in our church, he was a gentle giant who served as a Sunday school teacher of 2- and 3-year-old children. I remember him sitting a little boy on his knee, holding a plastic banana and telling him that bananas have a lot of potassium. It was adorable. He had a real way with young kids. People in our church counted on him not only to do church duties, but to be a good example of someone who put God first in life, and his actions showed that. He brought us to church every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, and every Wednesday night. Still, the people at church didn't truly know him. They didn't know that he always said a prayer before we ate dinner, even if we couldn't always make out the words. They didn't know that he would wake up at 5 a.m. or earlier to read his Bible and pray. He would sit in the living room, Bible on his knee, eyes closed, reading glasses hanging off the end of his nose. He kept a little spiral-bound notebook, and he would write out his prayer requests every morning, day after day. He didn't care if anyone looked through it, and sometimes I did. It was usually names of people, family, and friends, written in the same order day after day. Every now and then a name disappeared, a prayer answered. Sometimes Dad would talk about his wilder days, living on his own, working at the bakery, driving his Chevy Nova. I remember him telling me that my mom insisted that he give away his record albums before they had kids. We're talking hundreds of albums. Pink Floyd, Jethro Tull, Janis Joplin, Led Zeppelin, Santana, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, and on and on and on. But really, I think that we knew his days weren't that wild because he was also a real introvert. He was most comfortable on the outskirts of parties, listening to other people until he found a good moment. Out in public, he usually didn't strike up conversations with other people. But if someone else started a conversation, he could get really into it. The people who knew him best were his family. To his family, he was animated, charismatic, the creator of a rich cast of characters, both fictional and exaggerated personalities from life. Perfect example, when my mother's brother Ray was a little boy, Dad asked him if he wanted to go see the Hodads, who lived in some rock formations down by Mankato. Then he created stories about what the Hodads did. And of course, there was a song that went with the Hodads that went something like this. Move over, Hodad, you're in my way. He created a slew of nicknames for his kids: Little Shaver Top, Radio Flyer, Bunky, Holly Gooma the Arnesty. We never really figured out what that meant. Scamper, which became Scampy. He developed sayings for talking about and to our pets, as you heard Holly mention. He would say to our cat, "Oh, Monsieur, where art thou, Monsieur?" And just to be clear, the cat's name was not Monsieur. He composed songs to narrate things that he did in life. You couldn't just say the words, you also had to sing the song that goes with it. For driving, he would say, "I'm an old Edsel whipper from way back. I whip my Edsel around." For playing a board game with dice, he would say, "Every time I roll the die." And there were just just his everyday sayings. For talking about expensive things, he would say it costs $10 skyrilion. Or if he was stressed, he was experiencing cyronic tension. I don't know if he ever knew it, but this was his real talent in life, his real calling. This is where he really shined. He was born to be a storyteller, and he was a magnificent storyteller. When I picture him in his happiest moments, I see him across the table, telling a story, gesturing with his hands, lifting his eyebrows with shine, rolling his eyes, smiling, giving a laugh, and delivering his punchline with a note of mirth. And if you ever talk to his kids, you know that this is the part of his legacy that lives on in all of us, and I am honored to have inherited it. But he had trouble expressing how he felt about the people he loved most in life. He could come up with all different kinds of ways to talk about how terrible the coffee was at McDonald's and Chillicothe. This coffee tastes like dishwater. But he had trouble telling us that he loved us. He didn't know how to deal with us if we were hurting or in pain. I think he felt like he needed to be the strong one, the one with all of the answers. And it took him a while to acknowledge, hey, I don't have all the answers, and that's okay. But even if he couldn't say it, we knew it by the things that he did. When Phil needed to make a cake to earn his Cub Scouts badge, Dad helped him make it and ice it. After coming home from working the graveyard shift at the bakery, Dad would still come home and swing little Nate around on his ankles and carry him around on his back. When Holly was in marching band, he went to every game that she played for. He cheered for her, even though she said, "Stop, Dad." And when our house was on fire, he went into the smoke because he thought Tina was still in her crib. And as for me, when I went to college, I started getting little care packages in the mail. And Mom and Dad would put in typical snacks and drinks and maybe some cute socks. But they also started sending these really strange-looking stuffed animals. I remember this one stuffed animal that was a rabbit with googly eyes that wobbled around and spiky hair because rabbits have hair. And if that wasn't bad enough, it had a zipper for a mouth, and hanging out of its mouth, it had a plastic carrot-shaped bag filled with orange M&Ms. I asked my mom whose idea the rabbit was, and she rolled her eyes and she said, "Oh, your dad. He spends so much money playing that claw game, and then he wins stuff like this." I collected a lot of stuffed animals throughout college. Dad, I don't know if the space between us is unimaginably vast, or if you're closer to me than you've ever been, but I hope that you can hear this. I hope that my voice carries to wherever you are. I hope that it makes you proud. That it makes you feel like your life was well lived. Because, Dad, it was a well-lived life. It was not easy for you. You fathered 4 kids, welcomed a 5th by adoption, and then you provided for them for 20 plus years using every bit of talent and work ethic that you had. You even relocated a family of 6 away from everyone you knew in order to do so. You survived a devastating house fire, bankruptcy, job change, job loss, rebelling children as they search for their paths in life, and a veritable circus of animals. You lived through injuries, you lived with diabetes, high blood pressure, Parkinson's, and depression. But there was also a lot of sweetness in life, Dad. There were fishing trips with your brothers, trips to the cabin on Pebble Lake with your wife and kids. There were bedtime stories to your giggling children. There were Saturday afternoons at Eastwood Lake when you let us run wild, your secret trick for getting us to go to bed. There were games of Monopoly on New Year's Eve, and trips to Minnesota with 7 people in a sedan. There were Christmas trees that no matter how much you recut the trunk, continued to lean to the side. There were church services where you dozed off in your seat after 20 minutes of preaching. Oh, those Baptists. There were countless Saturday mornings with you in charge, your cup of coffee in hand, your newspaper splayed before you. Bananas are 19 cents a pound. With your black and white mini TV playing WWF wrestling in the background while you were watching 5 Kids. There was that one trip that we took to Wyoming in the station wagon. You remember it, I'm sure. It started with the roof of the car caving in under the weight of 40 pounds of canned soup. And then dog food spilling off out into the interstate as your kids chanted, "It's raining dog food, Dad!" And it ended with a rainbow. And then there was your wife, Dad. You picked a good woman, the best woman that there was for you. And I know that God had a hand in that. You don't have to worry. We will take care of her. Dad, there are 1,000 ways that your story could be told because everyone knew you in a different way. But I hope that the way that I've told your story is the closest to how you would have told it. I would be honored if it were.